Joining me now is our friend, Pennsylvania Congresswoman Madeleine Dean. She is a member of the Appropriations and Foreign Affairs Committee. So welcome, Congressman. Congresswoman, of course, sorry about that. White House border czar Tom Homan said today he hopes TSA agents will be paid by Monday or Tuesday after the president signed that executive order. But the administration has not been clear where that money will come from. Do you welcome, first of all, that move? And is it within presidential authority to make that move?
Well, good to be with you this Palm Sunday, Alex. I have to tell you, what a silly season for these folks. The president had the ability all along to make sure that these folks were funded. I have been in and out of Philadelphia Airport and many other airports, and I can't say enough about the TSA workers who take this work so seriously, take the work of keeping us safe in the air and on the ground. And how dare this administration and the Republican majority, who is in control of government, not to have paid them. So any of these silly arguments that are being made are just extraordinarily dangerous and wrong. The Republicans had control all along. The president and the Republican leadership in the House and the Senate chose not to pay TSA agents.
It's as if the agents and the American people are just pawns in all of this. And as you know, the House...
They use them as pawns. They use them as pawns.
The House Republicans on Friday rejected the Senate's unanimously passed bill to fund DHS, but not ICE and Border Patrol. Then House Republicans, they're now pushing the stopgap bill, which is fully funding the department for 60 days, I believe, with no ICE reforms. That is expected to be DOA in the Senate. So where do negotiations go from here? Is there any point at which Democrats accept funding ICE without the guardrails that you've long been demanding?
Of course not. Of course not. Take a look at what the Senate did in the middle of the night. They recognized that, of course, it was incredibly wrong to not fund TSA. And that the president had the power all along. I'm an appropriator. We as appropriators had the power all along, but the Republican majority chose not to fund them. I think it says more about the weakness of the Speaker of the House, that when this compromise deal came over unanimously, I'm talking from the most progressive of Democratic senators to the most conservative of Republican senators. Somehow I find myself in a position with Ted Cruz. Honest to God, the Speaker couldn't take the deal. He could not move forward the legislation that would have guaranteed TSA workers their pay. They should never have not been paid. I don't know what's wrong with the Speaker, but I have a feeling it has something to do with he's worried about his own position. He is not worried about the pay for TSA.
And probably doesn't want to clash with Donald Trump, because nobody certainly enjoys that. The Washington Post reports that the Trump administration is preparing for weeks of ground troop operations in Iran. This past week, during a briefing, Pentagon leaders gave House Armed Services members, tensions reportedly flared over the officials' inability to explain the endgame or the cost of the war, or address the prospect of U.S. ground troops being deployed. How do you respond to this potential escalation of the war?
Well, what we have said, Democrats have said all along, we're now 4 weeks into this war. It's a gravely serious situation. This president will be remembered for rubble, whether it's the East Wing or the Middle East. And what Democrats have asked of the Pentagon, of this administration, of Marco Rubio, and others involved in this is, what was the evidence? What was the mission? And what is the end game? We have gotten no answers to any of it. So this is a very scary, reckless war. We have 13 members of our military dead. We have hundreds wounded, thousands of civilians in the rubble, many of them children, many of them dead. This is a very reckless and extraordinarily dangerous war, and it's very clear the president and Secretary Christy Hegseth, as I see him, does not understand the gravity of what they are involved in. What they have done is made us less safe. The American people hired this president, Donald Trump, and I wanted him to be successful. They hired him to make us more safe and to make life more affordable. What has he done? He's made us grotesquely less safe daily, every single day. Take a look at TSA. and terrorism around the world. And of course, life is so much more unaffordable as a result of this president.
May I ask you quickly your takeaway from yesterday in the No Kings marches?
Oh, you know what? It was really uplifting. It buoyed me. I went to one in Norristown, which is my county seat. There were thousands there. And then I went to one in Philadelphia. Of course, 250 years ago, our founders drafted the Declaration of Independence, listing 27 grievances of a king at that time, King George. It was so uplifting, so positive. And I will say to you, I saw plenty of people my age, but what I really liked was I saw people who were young. I don't know if they sent you along a picture, but there was a picture that I had with young people who worked within agencies within the administration, and also a young couple who was married just 2 weeks ago in Philadelphia. People feeling buoyed up. It was so fun. Buoyed up and recognizing that citizen involvement is exactly what it's going to take. So
sounds like they spent part of their honeymoon, that young couple. That's great. Madeleine Dean, as always.
Can I just say, listen to the words of the Pope. It's Palm Sunday. Listen to the words of the Pope. He said, there is blood on the hands of those who say they pray to Jesus Christ. They pray to some God, any God, in terms of brutal victory in war. Listen to Pope Leo. He is absolutely right.
On this Palm Sunday.
Any God rejects such prayers. And Secretary Hegseth, I reject those prayers.
Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, thank you.